Hey guys, and welcome to Graphic Designer Pro, and welcome back for another live tutorial. If this is your first time joining us for a live tutorial, these are basically just a bit of fun where we take a look at basically anything design related, jump into the likes of Illustrator, and you can basically follow along with creating something. So in this case, as you probably already know, we're going to be taking a look at the Apple logo. So how it came to be, how it's developed over the years, and how you can recreate it in Illustrator. We've already done a few of these. We've already looked at the Nike logo and the Adidas logo. So if you haven't already, go and check them out as well. They're on our channel, and they were a lot of fun as well. We have also got some template files as well. So for all of these, we create a template file so you can download that and follow along with what I'm doing from home as well. So we want these to be basically as interactive as possible. You're welcome to ask any questions along the way as well. I'll do my best to keep an eye on the chat as well, but just excuse me if I miss a few along the way because I'll be trying to sort of keep things moving as well, but I'll do my best just to take a break and check the chat as well. So any questions, let me know. But yeah, this is an exciting one. This is one I've been looking forward to doing for quite a while. Obviously, the Apple logo, I would say, is arguably one of the most well-known logos in the world, if not the most well-known. It's an icon, I think, for logo design, literally as well. It's what a lot of designers strive to create these days when it comes to logo design. It's so well refined and simplified, and the fact that it was designed so many decades ago, 1977 I believe it was, well, we're about to find out, is just incredible that it's barely changed since then. It was so ahead of its time and a real trendsetter in logo design. So a really good one to look at for any budding logo designers out there. Just before we get started, I would also just like to mention that we are still running a free logo design workshop, which I will chuck a link in the chat for in a second. I'll just put that in now. So there's also a link in the description. So if you're interested in, taking your logo design to the next level, or just learn more about, our professional process that we've used on all our clients, tons of clients with huge success, check that out. It's not particularly long as well. It's really easy to consume in an evening. So definitely check that link out, and we take you through it. There's also a bunch of free bonuses within there as well. So just thought I would mention that. But let's jump into the actual meat of this video. So we're going to be taking a look at the kind of origins of the Apple logo first and foremost. So what I'm also going to do is just drop a link in the description for this article we're looking at. So just if you want to look at this in more detail, I'm just going to be sort of skimming through this just for the sake of time. We don't want this video dragging on too much, and I could sit here talking about all the little details and it'd be here for hours. So we'll sort of skim over the basis of it. So I'm sure probably most of you watching this will have seen the original Apple Computer Co logo, and it is so different to what we're used to these days. You'll hopefully see that on screen now. But this is basically the what they started with, and it was actually created by one of the co-founders, Ronald Wayne, at the time. So this was slightly before Steve Jobs arrived on the scene, and it was only after he arrived on the scene that changed then to the more traditional logo that we know today. So this one centered around an illustration of Sir Isaac Newton and the apple above, and you can read about the kind of thinking behind that, but really interesting to see that this is what they started with. And I believe it was Steve Jobs that came on board and basically said it just wasn't very versatile. Obviously, you look at this now, and it's easy to look at a logo like this nowadays and say, that's not a logo, that would never work as a logo. But it really was companies like Apple that really changed the logo design game to what it is nowadays, where we have very well refined, very versatile, and very memorable logos. So this was much more commonplace back in 1976 when it was created. But if we move on, so we then got the next iteration of the Apple logo, which is much closer to what we know today, and this was designed by a graphic designer called Rob Janoff. So Again, anyone who's kind of read a little bit into this already will already know his name. And it basically started off that Steve Jobs asked him to design this logo, and I think even from the initial stages, he wanted it to be something so recognizable that they wouldn't actually have to use the word Apple as well. And you'll obviously know that nowadays you never actually see the word Apple typed out next to it. There is no type when it comes to the Apple company. It is just this icon. That's how recognizable it is. There was actually a version of it though that did have a logo type as well, which we'll take a look at in a moment. But he was saying to get to the design he got, he essentially just bought a load of apples and just started sketching them and refining them. And this is such a good process and story. This is what we preach as well in our logo design workshop. It's just about iterating and developing these ideas, and it can start from something very simple and very rough as well, and just continually working on it until you get something much more refined and recognizable, and something that's going to work well as a logo. So very simple in appearance, and little things to note is that he decided to put the bite into the apple to make it more recognizable as an apple. I believe in this article it says it was to also differentiate it from a cherry tomato, but then I've seen other articles say that it was just from a cherry, so I'm not entirely sure what's correct in that sentence, but you get the idea. It's to make it more recognizable as an apple. And there was also a bit of a play on words in that it's a bite out of an apple, and you also get bytes when it comes to sort of computer speak, like BYTE. So clever, very clever. Here we can get a little bit of a breakdown of the evolution of the logo through the years as well. The other thing to note about the initial Apple logo design is that it featured this spectrum of colors. So I'm trying to the sort of thinking behind that again was to coincide with the release of the Apple II computer, which was a full color computer. As well, I think Steve Jobs said he wasn't too particular about the colors being used, but he wanted green at the top because that was where the leaf was, and it was to convey the color of the leaf. That's still my absolute favorite design as well, if I'm being honest. I just love that spectrum logo. I just think it looks so good. We'll keep moving down here. So there you go. There's an example of the Apple on the Apple logo on the Apple II computer. So you can see this one does have a logo type that kind of fits in with the bite of the Apple. And funnily enough, this font is actually the same font used on the original Reebok logo as well. So if you're familiar with that, I think I've got so there's an image of the kind of full logo at that time with Apple Computer Inc. in that font as well. But I think that was the only time that they actually featured a logo type in the lockup, which is quite interesting. Here as well, we'll sort of go back to the article, but this is just a little evolution of the logo. So again, you can see here the apple with the logo type, then it moved to just the apple by itself with the spectrum. And then in 1998 was when we kind of went to that first kind of monotone black apple, very geometric, very simple. In the early sort of mid 2000s, we got these kind of glassy and metallic versions, which were of a time. I think it was just the style then. It was a kind of big thing, and it also kind of coincided with the design of the computers as well. So if anyone remembers those kind of bubbly, large-backed iMacs at the time that had the kind of blue transparent backs to them, this was very much in keeping with that. 2008 was more metallic. Again, it was just the style, but you can see that the actual design itself has really stayed much the same. And it was in 2014 it got a very slight redesign by another agency, and I'll just remind myself of the name of that agency because I'll make a mess of it otherwise. I believe it was Landor and Associates. So all they basically did was make it a little bit more geometric, redesigning it in modern software like Illustrator, just to bring it in to the sort of new age of logos. So I don't think this one maybe does it justice. You can kind of see it with that first logo. It's actually really quite rough when you look at it, and obviously this was all hand done at that time. Rob Janoff designed it by hand. It wasn't there were no computers involved in that design initially, so it was much more rough, and it was only in the kind of from the sort of 1998 one onwards that it started to get tidied up a bit, and you can see in the 2014 and onwards it's a much cleaner, more geometric and more precise design, which is kind of what we're going to be looking at in Illustrator. So I've never seen this diagram before. I think this goes right into the maths behind it. This image down here, hopefully you'll be able to see it all right, where we basically have the logo made up of the golden ratio circles. So I won't go too in depth with this because it's a topic in itself, the golden ratio, but this has actually been debunked, and it's not actually been designed in this way. I don't know who's created this, but a lot of people believe it adheres to the Fibonacci sequence or the golden ratio, and actually it doesn't. There's a really good article about this where it is debunked basically, and this guy sort of breaks it down and shows you that it's nonsense basically. And it's actually just quite an interesting read anyway into why people put so much into the golden ratio as well, and it being not actually that important in a lot of cases with logo design. So I'll pop that into the chat as well so you can check that in your own time. Give me 2 seconds. But yeah, it's a common topic of debate using the golden ratio. Some people do swear by it, and I'm not saying it can't produce brilliant results, but it can also blinker some designers that feeling like they have to use it when really they don't. But it can be a useful guide as well. So yes, so I think that kind of rounds it off in terms of the evolution of the logo. Like I say, it's in a much more precise geometric form these days, but still completely recognizable. You look at that 2014 to present, and you look back to the 1977 design, and it's really the core of excuse the pun, is still very much intact with the design. Really incredible design in the first place, the fact that it has lasted so long with such little change. Yeah, so what we'll do now is jump into Illustrator to actually take a look at the design of it and how we can recreate it. Now, before we do, I'll just drop a link as well for the template download. There is a link in the description as well. So if you want to follow along, you can do. I'll also just check the chat, see who's tuning in. So we've got Ali, who says he's very excited to be here. We've got Fauzi saying hello. Great to see you guys joining. We've got the Dev Ninja saying hi and saying, I do very amazing videos. Thank you very much, Dev Ninja. I really appreciate that. I love the feedback that we get on these videos. It really does make such a difference hearing what you guys think. And if there's anything else you guys want to see as well from the channel, let us know as well, because we always love to know what you budding designers and people are sort of looking for. So definitely let me know if you have anything in particular. So we've got our template file here. Pretty simple, to be honest. We've got a couple of reference logos here. So these are just raster images that we're going to use to trace. Now these are actually taken from, it was a download from the official Apple assets library. So what I've done is basically rasterize a vector version of the logo. So this should be as true to what the actual logo is as I could find. You know, there's lots on the internet now. There's interpretations of it that aren't actually quite right. So this should be pretty accurate. I've also, if you check the layers panel, we've got a few things set up here. So we've got those reference logos on their own layer. You can toggle the visibility of them if you want to turn them off. We're going to be designing on this design layer. We're going to set up some guides on this guides layer. And I've also got this examples layer. So what I'm going to do is just turn off our reference logos for a second. So this is just, this is one that we've traced ahead of time, just to give you an idea of what we've done. And then this is the actual downloaded asset that I was talking about. So this is the official vector file for the logo. And again, this is always a good idea if you can get an official version of any big company's logo. Check their placement of anchor points and things. You can see this is really clean in its application, very few anchor points. So this is a really, really nicely designed logo. And we'll kind of go into this a little bit more as we create the design. So I'm just going to turn off that examples layer for now. We'll turn our reference logos back on. And again, if this is your first live tutorial that you're tuning into, what we've done in the other two is how to go trying to design it without any reference. And this is kind of an interesting exercise just in how well you can remember a logo and how you can try and design it without having any kind of help. So that's what I'm going to try and do first. Just to warn you, these always turn out pretty horrendously, nowhere near like the original logo, but it's just a little bit of fun this at the end of the day. So what I'm going to start is, let's go to my design layer. So I've got a black fill. I'm just grabbing my ellipse tool. I'm just going to drag out a circle holding shift and then holding option. I'm using a Mac, so if I say option, it'll be alt on a PC. If I say command, it'll be control on a PC, just for any people working on different machines. So I'm going to hold option, click and drag, and also hold shift to drag this off at a 45-degree angle. So what I'm doing here is trying to create that kind of leaf shape at the top of the apple. So this is just my quick and easy way of trying to do it. I already know from experience that this isn't how to create it, but we're just going to do it this way, just for you know, a bit of fun. So right, we've got our leaf, and I'm just going to grab my pen tool now. So I'm trying to think roughly on the spacing. I'll start from here. I'm just clicking and dragging, and I'll do this when it comes to the trace as well, but I'm going to use the 90-degree rule. So that means clicking and dragging and holding shift, so that we're always dragging our Bezier handles out at 90-degree angles. This is a useful technique that we cover. We also cover this in a separate video called pen tool techniques. So I would highly recommend, if you want to get better at using the pen tool, to check out that video, because we go into much more detail with that. So we've got our first handle here. I'm just going to click and drag again, and then once more down the side here. Like I say, this is going to be probably pretty terrible compared to the real thing, but I'm just going to guess my way around it. We'll go down towards the bottom. You can already see this is looking pretty terrible, but I'm more just trying to think about roughly where the anchor points are being placed, so we know it then curves up here, and I'm just pulling these out initially, and then I can always go back. And what I'll do here, press escape, and then I can fine-tune these a little bit more, and then I can basically just mirror this onto the other side, so that I know I've got something more symmetrical. So we'll just keep playing around with these Bezier handles here. So it's so far from perfect, but I'm just going to do this pretty quickly here. So I'm alt dragging that side. I'm going to go over to my properties and just click this flip horizontally option. You can see this just looks absolutely horrific, but I can select both. It's way, way too wide. Let's see, the anchor points at the bottom here, I don't think should be nearly so low down. Oh, it's just a complete mess, this whole thing, guys. But hey, it's good fun. I would highly recommend you guys still trying this at home. See how accurate you can make it. Let's just move these up a bit. Okay, so I'm just going to sort of give up there, I think. Let's merge all that together. Let's go back to my layers, and I'm going to turn on the reference logos, and you can see that's pretty horrific. I've forgotten to do the bite. I've forgotten to do the most important bit. Let's turn that off again, and I'm just going to grab an ellipse here. Again, kind of tricky to know the size. I think it's quite high up, and it's not massive. It is quite subtle. We'll go with something like that, and let's press Shift M for my shape builder, holding option, click through those two. Okay, so there we go. Absolutely nothing like the original, but yeah, it's a fun exercise nonetheless. So let's actually go and try and trace it properly now. So with our reference image here, what I'm going to do is go up to my guides layer, and this is something I always recommend doing and always try to do if I'm using some kind of reference image, or even if it's a sketch that you've done in your research and development phases. It can just really help when it comes to placing anchor points and things. So what I'm going to do is grab my rectangle tool, and I'm going to flip the fill to a stroke. Let's pick a nice bright color that's going to show up. I'll go with like a bright pink, just because I know that's going to show up. I'm also going to take the stroke weight down to 0.5, I think. We'll go with that. And all I'm really trying to do here is map out the edges, or where I think anchor points are going to have to be placed to make this logo. So I'm just going to roughly drag out a rectangle first, and now I'll just go in and fine tune it. So interestingly, with this design, you look at it and you think everything is very precise and aligns properly, but you can see even here, the kind of top of this left-hand hump in the apple is actually sitting lower than the right-hand side. And this is the same at the bottom as well when we get to it. In fact, let's just go down to there now. I'll resize this box, and the right-hand side is ever so slightly higher up than the left. I don't know if this is just a slight issue with this asset in particular, or if it is meant to be like that, but that is something to consider, is that optical balance is always more important than mathematical balance. So if this hump was as tall as that one, it might actually look bigger because we've got the bite out of the apple or something. So it's something to always consider with logo design, is that you want it to look optically aligned and balanced over like a mathematical balance. So again, just finding these edges here. Got that right hand side. I'm just going to drag out a line now with my line segment tool, holding shift so that I know it's perfectly horizontal. Grab my arrow tool again. I'm just going to drag that up to roughly align there. And then I'll do the same down at the bottom, just option clicking that previous line. And I'll drag this down, and I'm just looking at this lining up at the bottom of this curve now. Now I also want one where these curves go up the way. So again, just try to find where that's going to intersect with that line, just for plotting our anchor points. This is going to make it much easier. Same here, drag this down. Okay, so we've pretty much got all the lines we need. I just need to duplicate this one more time, and then I'm just going to rotate this by 90 degrees. So holding shift, and then I'm just going to look to align this where the point of the bite is, and then again where the bite comes in to its leftmost point. So around there. Perfect. So that should be all the kind of guidelines we need for the main area of the apple. The other thing with this bite is that we can try using an ellipse for this and see how it goes. It might be that it's a perfect fit for an ellipse, so we'll try that first, but if not, we can always use our pen tool, and the pen tool is what we're going to be using to create this as well, I should also point out. Now another thing here is that we obviously created that leaf in our sort of rough version with two ellipses overlapping, but it wouldn't actually work like that for this design. So again, I'm going to click and drag a rectangle out here, and we'll start with the left edge. So you'll see what I mean if I drag this in a touch. The actual bottom point sits slightly further in than that. This is obviously me being very, very sort of picky with this as well. You can kind of take these things with a slight pinch of salt. It's very, very marginal, but if you're wanting to try and do it as accurately as you can, then that's just what you have to do. Pay attention to these little details. Let's grab my line tool again, click and drag down a vertical line, and it's going to be a little bit tricky to see, but I'm just really looking to see where that point finishes, and something like that. So you can see it's very, very marginal, but we'll go with this just for the sake of this tutorial, and we'll go with something like that. Okay, so I think I would say we've got all of our guides ready now, good to go. So all I'm going to do is lock that guides layer, go down to my design layer. Now I'm going to grab my pen tool, and again, we're going to use a stroke to begin with. I'll maybe bump this up to 1 point and we'll choose a different color just so we can kind of see it against the guides. This time I'll go with a bright blue instead. Okay, so what I'll do is let's start at this point over here. So pen tool selected, design layer we're on. So you can see now I can use these guides with my smart guides. So I'm just going to click where that point is, roughly speaking. And like I say, I'm going to use the 90-degree rule in this design. So check out that video if you want to know more about this rule. But clicking and dragging off to the left, always dragging in the direction that you're creating the path, and then I'm just trying to match it up with that curve, like so. What I really should have done here is put my guides layer underneath the design layer so we can see our line a little bit more clearly, but I can sort that afterwards. What I'm going to do here is hold Command so we get our direct selection tool and just drag this Bezier handle back a bit, because I know it's going to be too much curve, and it's probably still too much, but we'll go to the middle here and click and drag. I hope you guys can see this okay. It might be a little bit tricky to see some of what I'm doing here, but hopefully it becomes clear as we get to finishing it. So we'll go with that. And then I'm coming all the way down to this side now. So we're really just looking at where these guidelines intersect with our image, with the edges of the image. Clicking and dragging down the way this time. And in this case, I'll have to go back, hold Command again, and just click and drag, also holding Shift so that it's still on that horizontal plane. So that's looking pretty good. Come all the way down to the bottom now, and we're going to the bottom-most line here. So I'm just going to click and drag to the right, holding Shift. We'll go with something like that. We might need to slightly adjust this handle back here again. So the 90-degree rule does make this process a lot easier, just for getting those Bezier handles a little bit more accurate, and you can be sure that it's going to give you a nice flowing line as well. Go something like that and bring this handle back. Again, I think that's looking good enough, which is all we need. Click and drag to the right. Let's bring this Bezier handle back a touch. Oops. So it's just a case of fine tuning. It does take a bit of that, especially when you're using the pen tool. It's very difficult to do something sort of perfect straight from the off. And I'm just going to go back up to this point now and just click once because it's a sharp corner, and then I'll just try holding Shift and dragging that to see if it matches that curve. It's not great. What I'd maybe need to do is just drag a Bezier curve out of that point. In this case, I think I'm just going to leave it. I think it's probably good enough. And yeah, and what we can do from this point is just press Escape. And what I'm going to try and do, as I said, is grab an ellipse. So my ellipse tool, click and drag holding Shift. And again, this is just going to take a little bit of trial and error to see if this fits well or not. It might not be a perfect fit for an ellipse, although it looks like it could be good enough. Again, we're looking for that good enough. Maybe not completely perfect. Let's try zooming in, and this is something you might have to do as well, is just try zooming in and out just to see how it's looking in the more sort of detailed areas. I think that looks pretty good though, like I say, for the most part. And these are overlapping. That's one thing I could do here, is just move that point up so that it's definitely intersecting with the circle, but still on this guideline. I'll do the same down here. Grab that point, just drag it down, wait for that smart guide to pop into place, and there you have it really. Let's turn off my, in fact, I'll come back and I'll finish this up once we've done the leaf. So we'll just grab the pen tool. So as I was pointing out, a little bit difficult to see here, but our starting point is actually this writer line here. So I'm going to click that, we'll go to the outside edge and just click and drag up. I'll still try using the 90-degree rule for this one as well. We may need a point in the middle here, but what I'll try is just going over to this side. I'll click and drag. Yeah, we will need a point in the middle. So what I'll do is I'll just press Command Z. It's a little bit trickier, but I'll just click and drag. Or what I'll do, actually, you know what? For argument's sake, we will try the other technique that we look at in our pen tools video, which is using the anchor point tool. So I've clicked once there. I'm going to go back over to this side to where my other point is, click again, and what I can do is hold Option or Alt on a PC. That's just going to change to our anchor point tool on the fly, and I can just basically click and drag this one off to the side, and then I can go back to our original anchor point, click again. So we're only using 2 anchor points here, but that should actually be enough. And what we're doing here, if I hold Shift and C, that's going to change to it. Also sits underneath the pen tool here at the bottom. And what we can just do with this is just click and drag to kind of fine tune where the path is going. So sometimes a little bit easier when you're dealing with curved lines like this. So I want to make sure that this is dragging out enough to that outer line. And you can just kind of keep going back and forth until you're happy with what you've got. I'll do this at the bottom as well. This side needs to come out more to that line. You can drag it in again. These guides are still helpful in this case, because we can still use them to make sure that the line is traveling in the way that we want it to. So I think that should be fine. It might not be perfect, but for the sake of this demonstration, it should be fine. What I'm going to do is turn off my guides layer, and I'm going to turn off my reference logos layer as well. So we're just left with the lines that we've created. So if I click and drag over all of this, I'm going to press Shift M to get my shape builder tool as well. And this is just to get the shape that we've created with that ellipse. Hold Option to delete the ellipse. And you can see we've created this Apple logo with very few anchor points. I think even less than the official one uses, but not to say that that's always better, but you always want to strive for using as few anchor points as you can within reason. So let's press Shift X, and you can see it a little bit more clearly there. Let's just change this to black so that it's really obvious, and that's what we've got. So comparing it to my version without a reference image, you can see it's a damn sight better. Now, last but not least, we're also just going to create this spectrum version. So again, super easy to do this. What I'm going to do in this case is just grab a rectangle, and you'll notice as well here, just a small note, that the green and the blue areas are technically taller than the rest of them, and this again is for optical balance, and it also avoids any smaller areas. So where we've got the bumps at the bottom and the top, if they were all the same size, you might have really thin areas of green that wouldn't look nearly as nice. So it keeps much more balance within the logo, but I just thought it was worth noting that as well. So yeah, what I'm going to do is just grab my rectangle, and I'm just going to click and drag. What I'll do is press Shift X to flip that to a stroke. And again, we're kind of just using these as a guide, but we will use the shape builder tool as well. So I'm just going to match this up to that first cut in the color. Then on this one, we're going to be a little bit more precise here, so we can use snap to our original rectangle like so. And from here, what I can do is hold Option, hold Option and click and drag to duplicate this. I'm going to hold Shift as well, just to keep it on that same plane. And where it snaps, I can let go. And what I can do from here is just press Command D, and that's just going to do the same set of steps again. So it's going to transform again, essentially. Now you can see I'm not quite spot on at the top there, so I'm just going to click and drag over these 4. Let's zoom right in and then I'm just going to scale them up slightly to match up. So this should all be pretty good. And that's actually all we need. In fact, we don't even really need this bottom one. It's really these four in the middle. So what I can do from this point of view, I could just duplicate the trace we've just made, but I'm just going to actually just drag these across. So wanting to make sure that it, intersects every part of the original logo we just created. And I'm just going to turn off my reference logos layer again. So we've got our design here and we've got these rectangles. I'm going to click and drag over all of them, hold Shift M for my shape builder tool. And what I can do first is just holding Option, click and drag in the areas that are out with the logo. So just clicking through them. And then what I can do is go through each of these to add the color. What I'll do first is just click on them, and that's just going to create shapes from each of them. From that point, I'm just going to switch to my selection tool. I can grab these top two, for example. If I hit I on the keyboard, that's going to get my eyedropper tool, and I can just click on the green, for example, and we can just keep working our way down. So V to go back to my selection tool, click on the next selection, I to get my eyedropper again, and so on and so forth. So I can just repeat this process until we end up with the final thing. So it's really quite easy to do once you get the hang of it. Knowing the keyboard shortcuts as well is a huge help. I would highly recommend it, getting to know them better, because it does save you a lot of time. But that's really it. That is recreating the Apple logo. If I turn on my examples again, what I'm going to do is just grab the example that we created. So I created this in exactly the same way. If I click and drag over both of these and press A, that's going to just show the anchor point. So you can see it's quite similar in some cases. There's a few that my version doesn't have that might actually help with the flow of the lines a little bit more, but you can see for the most part they are pretty similar. You'd be pretty hard pushed to find much of a difference between them. But yeah, hopefully anyone following along from home was able to follow along with this and recreate your own, and I hope you enjoyed the process. But that's really it, guys, for this one. Like I say, anyone watching this retrospectively as well, if you have any questions, drop a comment down below. We always check the comments and things, so any questions, or like I say, any topics that you would like us to cover, let us know as well, and we'll be sure to add that to our list of upcoming videos. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.